suggest talking about academic articles today. To be more precise, what are the 10 things, 10 advices I would love to give, or 10 commandments for one to write a good article? The most immediate issue which comes to mind is the question of why would one ever want to write an academic article? And this is a good starting point for talking about how to improve your writing skills in what regards articles for academic journals. So why? An academic article is a big piece of text. It's a piece of text which is difficult to design, difficult to put together, difficult to promote. Most likely you will find much less readers for an academic article than for an op-ed, or even for an analytical report, or even for a book. Nevertheless, many people are engaged and do write occasionally academic papers, spending weeks or months of their time to come up with several dozens of pages of quite complicated text, full in professional terminology, footnotes, references, and, science. So my first advice is to concentrate on the question of why. Why are you doing this? To put it more formally, there are people who have to write academic pieces from time to time. Mostly they are professors or academic scientists for whom writing an academic article is a part of a contract. This is a skill which is necessary. It is supposed that you are not only teaching, but that you make some scientific advantages or scientific discoveries, no matter what is meant by scientific discovery within the realm of social science or political science. In studying international relations, it is assumed that there are some regularities which can be generalized, found out, or summed up. So basically, we do science in international relations, although some people are quite skeptical about whether it can be called science strictly, and whether it can be paralleled or compared to physics, for instance, or mathematics or astronomy. But nevertheless, some correlations exist and some regularities exist, and it is assumed that among different phenomena or different events which can be observed in the real life in international politics, we can find some interesting patterns, or we can find something which would resemble laws which are obeyed by international actors. And we are supposed to write about them, we are supposed to discover them. So sometimes this is a part of our job, and a part of our profession. And because of that, we sometimes go beyond the boundaries of more easy writing in the form of op-eds and in the form of whatever essays, columns, or any other types of texts, and try to make some science. Besides, sometimes we are trying to get our PhD done, or sometimes we are aiming at our contract being extended. And in that case, we need an academic article. So when we decide that we need to write it, the next step we do is looking for a puzzle or a question to address. Among the host of news we are observing in different media over international politics every day, we can sometimes see a lot of simplification, a lot of easy answers to quite difficult questions. Why a state A attacked state B? Or why didn't it do it? Why a state A established close cooperation or closer cooperation or formed an alliance with a state B, what results would it bring? Whether it would be beneficial or not? Would that increase the chances for war or stabilize the international system? How interdependence impacts the probability of a militarized conflict? How lack of democracy is resulting in hostilities or a lack of them? A host of theoretical questions can be posed concerning a variety of situations in international political life. These questions are difficult to answer. Well, they may seem to be quite easy because there are ready-made answers in school textbooks of history, for instance, in newspapers, in other medias. People tend to simplify things and give simple answers. They believe in lots of common wisdoms or easy truths about the mechanisms of international politics, but very often that seems to be wrong. So we have to realize that there are a lot of puzzles and interesting questions around us. And we have also to realize that the answers which have been already provided may have been not enough. They may be just wrong. And one of the peculiar features of international politics, or of social life in general, is that it is constantly changing. So you can have, in a way, correct answers provided in the past, which will be relevant for all the situations in the future. Political and social systems are flexible, they change, and the very basic foundations of how they are operating are also changing over time. Because of that, even old questions which have already been answered before need another look sometimes. They need to be revisited with a different set of methods and with different sets of theories. Almost every topic you are researching can be formulated in a very short and very challenging question. One of the recent examples, why Russia invaded Ukraine in February of 2022. This question can be addressed at different levels. Some simple answers can be provided, for instance, that Russian leadership has just gone mad and lost touch with reality and just made a mistake. But that question would probably not be enough for everybody. In order to provide a deeper answer, you can find and focus on specific elements or specific factors contributing into that decision. And that will be the first step in a scientific approach to this question and the first step to making a scientific discovery. So look for a puzzle and try to formulate a question which would be non-trivial, which would require some additional thinking. After doing that, proceed to the most difficult part. Choose your method and build your model. Any research we are involved in is about creating a model. A model is a simplified version of reality, something which you invent, the way, your unique way of simplifying all the complexity of events you can observe in a specific area, and providing a model which would, in your mind, reflect the most crucial, the most fundamental features of that complicated reality. So no matter how your model is designed, whether it will be a verbal model, for instance, a description, a more or less detailed description of a particular invasion, for instance, by Russia, of Ukraine in 2022. You can describe it in many different ways. This will be a verbal model, a simplification, which would be based on your personal assessment of what is important and what is not in international politics. But your model can also be non-verbal. It may be a formal model, quantifiable, which will be presented in the way of a matrix of a game theory, or as an equation, or in any other quantifiable way, quantitative way. So your model and the method you pick would be the most important thing for your text to be scientific, to be different from a text published as an op-ed in a popular newspaper. Op-eds in popular newspapers are written in a simple language, by creating simple verbal models, understandable for everybody. A more deep research, a more scientific research, would involve more complicated models. So that's what you will have to do. Create a model of your own and define the measure of its complexity. Picking up the methods. What makes up a science in general, and what makes up a scientific research is a method. You can have a theory or a set of hypotheses or assumptions. You also have a set of facts, but you need something to link them. And that something is method. There is a wide range of methods in political science in general, and in international relations in particular. You may engage whatever you want, from historical description or historical analysis to comparative analysis to statistical methods or more formalized methods of research. But you need that. That is a scientific component, a scientific dimension of what you do. So in order to have an academic article, you have a well-designed methodology, a well-descripted and well-designed, which will be a specific part of the text of your article will be devoted to description of your methodology, and it should be innovative. That is what will make your research different from research of other people who probably have been thinking about the same questions and probably even have been dealing with the same set of facts and applying same sets of theories, but they may have done it differently because they have picked up different methods. The step number 4, along with picking up a theory and building up the model, picking up a method and building up the model, you will also will have to pick up the theory. The theory which will reflect your vision of a specific issue. There are several different ways of answering the question about why Russia invaded Ukraine. You may have built your reasoning about around the assumption that that is because of a low level of interdependence, for instance, or the weakness of international institutions, or the setbacks and problems in group decision making in Russia, which resulted in a mistaken decision. Or you can think about the balance of power, global, regional balance of power, and the security dilemma which has been resulting from it, the way it has been perceived by the Russian leadership, and the way the decisions which have been taken in Moscow on the eve of the war have been similar to the decisions which have been taken in Sparta on the eve of the Peloponnesian War in the 5th century BC. So in a way, each of these lines of reasoning anticipates different sorts of logic of your arguments, different kind of a vision of the whole problem and of all other problems which are similar to it. So you place yourself into one of the paradigms existing in current political science and international relations. You pick either realism, classical realism, defensive realism, neo-realism, or institutionalism, or neoliberalism, or neo-Marxism, or feminism, or whatever other different paradigm you would like to, which is most comfortable for you, which probably reflects your previous experience and corresponds to your own vision or understanding of how international politics work. Along with a method, your theoretical foundation is also to be described in your scientific paper. When you have picked your theory and have also picked your method and have presented your model, you will have to make step number 5 to assess the previous research which has been done on the issue you are addressing. This is also an important part because no scientific research, probably with an exception of Thucydides in 5th century BC or some ancient Chinese or Indian philosophers, no scientific research is done in a vacuum. When you are doing science, when you are writing an academic article, you are placing yourself within an established scientific context. You are engaging yourself into a dialogue with other researchers who have been addressing the same issue before. Well, it can be also assumed that international politics is not changing significantly over time. The context may be changing, the technology, for instance, the set of values, beliefs and norms, all these things can change, but some things remain unchanged, the structural parameters of international politics. At least some people believe this is the case. For instance, the struggle for power among states. The states themselves, as key actors of international politics, are believed to be a sort of eternal element of international politics, unchangeable element. They are worried about their existence or security. They want to maximize their security. They do not trust each other. So many people believe that these are elements which are not changing over time. That this is something which has always been present in international politics. And along with being present in international politics, it has been studied also. And many people at different times arrived to different conclusions and different generalizations and theories explaining how and why states are behaving in this or that way. So you have to demonstrate that you are aware of these attempts which have been taken before you started your academic research. And some of the conclusions which have been done by these people may still be relevant. They already mentioned Thucydides writing on the Peloponnesian War arrived at conclusions which are widely believed to be truth even today, to be correct. Like the one that the strong are doing, powerful are doing what they want and the weak are suffering what they must. This is something which can be applied to today's international politics by many. At the same time, there may be generalizations, conclusions and theories which over time has become weaker or even irrelevant. You also may want to engage into a discussion with them. You may want to prove that some ideas, for instance, that the high level of interdependence prevents states from going into war with each other because it is irrational. This conclusion, once made by, I guess, by many researchers, one of the most well-known is would be Normal Angel, proved to be wrong. It proved to be wrong by the very development of historic events, but it also might have been proved wrong by the arguments of other people. So when you are writing about interdependence today and how it is affecting the chances of states to be engaged into a war, you might want to address previous research. Not only research which has been done by well-known philosophers or thinkers thousands or hundreds of years ago, but also to demonstrate that you have followed the discussion over the issue and you know about the recent developments, the recent ideas, the recent articles or books which are addressing the same issue, which are probably critically assessing the ideas which have been put forward before, or which offer their own solutions, their own conclusions. If you are not aware enough of the research which has been carried out on the same issue you are working on, then probably you are doing an unnecessary job. Probably someone has already arrived to the conclusions which you plan to arrive to prove right or wrong. Probably someone has done it before. Probably someone has done it recently. So you have to be aware that you are not doing the job which has already been done by someone. And along with doing that, you will also critically assess the previous research. You will be engaged into a dialogue with other researchers. You will agree with some of them on some specific approaches or issues. You will disagree with others. And by doing that, you will formulate your own vision and your own theory over the issue which you are addressing. Step number six would be putting forward your own hypothesis. An academic article is not only about describing things, it's not only about advocating some specific vision or some specific opinion. It is not about being eloquent or persuasive. It is about generalizing. It is about ability to go actually beyond a specific topic you're studying and making theoretical generalizations. So you have to put forward several hypotheses which are interconnected, 3 or 4 hypotheses which are aiming at building a theory of describing why states or other actors are behaving the way they do. So the system of hypothesis, which would be your theoretical answer, a suggested theoretical answer to the question you are trying to examine, is another key element and another key step in writing an academic article. As long as you are ready with this, you will be able to proceed to step number 7, which is structuring your text. Usually, hypotheses you are putting forward give you a clue about how to shape your text, how to divide it into parts. So there will be an abstract, there will be an introduction, and there will be several chapters to the text. One way of structuring them is to link them to your hypothesis. So if you have a set of hypotheses which are saying that Russia invaded Ukraine because the group decision making, for instance, looks more prone to risk than individual one, and that was exactly the way the decision has been taken in Russia. Your second hypothesis would be that there was a perceived security dilemma in Russian foreign policy or security strategy planning in recent years, which pushed them to a conclusion that attacking Ukraine, preventive attack on Ukraine, would be the best possible move. And then probably you have a third hypothesis that there is a very favorable global international security environment for a conflict like this, because there is a struggle for hegemony between a declining and a rising hegemon. So you have this set of hypotheses, and they provide you with an answer of how to structurize your text. And probably you'll have one chapter devoted to group decision making, another chapter devoted to security dilemma, and a third chapter devoted to power transition theory and how rising challenges to hegemony are fighting with an existing hegemon. And then you will have a concluding chapter, as usual. So there is a certain pattern that you have an introduction, and you have a theoretical chapter which is devoted to your model theory and methods, and also to describing previous research. And there are several chapters of the text which are based on your hypothesis, and then there is a conclusion. Next step, number 8, is watching your style. Writing an academic article is different from writing any other type of text, including monographs, books, which are devoted to certain problems, or textbooks. Academic articles, even today, when there is a more liberal approach to how people frame their thoughts in different texts, but nevertheless, even today, writing an academic article implies keeping a certain style, academic style, which excludes different types of jargons or different types of funny wording, and demands a certain strict way of formulating your thoughts, and also application of specific terminology. So some complicated terms like international system, polarity, hegemony, or security dilemma, or bifurcation, or something like this, which would not appear quite often in op-eds or even analytical reports, is a commonplace in academic articles, or at least some people believe that it is a must in academic articles. This is something which makes an academic article different by the very appearance from other types of texts. Depending on your personal choice, depending on your personal views and preferences, you may pick up for a more complicated text stylistically. You can opt for longer sentences, especially if you are not writing in English, because in the English language, even in academic articles, short sentences, in my view at least, are better than long, complicated sentences, which in some cases may take the whole paragraph or half a page. But there are languages where it is easier to build longer, more complicated sentences. These sentences would be characteristic features of academic texts. I'm not a fan of long and complicated sentences, even when I write academic articles, but some people are, and this is completely legitimate in academic articles to use or to improve to this skill and to show how good you are at inventing complicated in putting it in a complicated way, saying in a complicated way about simple things, even about simple things, not to mention about things which are also complicated. Issue number 9, in my view, is about references. This is what may an academic article look different also. Without reading it, you may know that you are dealing with an academic article because there are references in it. In some cases, there are many references, several references at each page which describe in detail, not only address or refer you to a different source of some book or an article, but they may also explain what you mean. They may provide you with several competing views on the same issue. So everything which is additional can be used in referred to in references. Because of that, there are lots of them, and one cannot imagine an academic article without references. There are cases when it is required to refer to a specific source. When you are mentioning someone saying or writing about something, when you are referring to the words by another person, you have to provide a reference. If you are mentioning some numbers, quantitative data, which apparently has been taken from some source, you have to refer to provide a reference. You can provide it, you certainly are required to do it in case of quotations, and if you mention someone's views. Also, you have to refer to some specific books or articles by these people. There are different styles how references can be arranged, and usually when you are writing an article, you are examining the required stylistic styles of referencing within a certain journal you are having in mind, and arrange your references accordingly. At least there are two ways, two most widespread ways of arranging your references, but this is about forming the references. Along with that, there is an essential part to it. That is what I have already mentioned, that you have to provide references whenever they are needed. And my final remark, my 10th issue, would be an advice not to be afraid. It means that when you are doing science and when you are writing an academic article or make a scientific research, you may arrive to the conclusions which will be opposite to what you have been thinking before. They may confront your initial beliefs or your intuition, and that is normal. So when in the process of scientific research, of writing an article, you actually prove your initial hypothesis to be wrong, that would be a great scientific result. Don't be afraid of it, because many people do. They think that proving themselves wrong, their hypothesis wrong, is a sign of a bad scientific research, which is not the case. When you prove something wrong, then it provides you with the conditions to proceed, to make a progress in your understanding of the topic you're examining. And that would be a great conclusion to your scientific article and to your scientific research if you prove that something opposite to what you have been suggesting in the beginning turned to be the case. So writing an academic article is really difficult, it is challenging, it is much more complicated, and it is probably something which not so much people would be engaged in during their professional career. But this also may be fun, this is interesting, and in the case of international politics, it can also be useful.